Thank you, Professor Lily Melanie, for nice introduction. And thank you very much for attending my lecture today. As Lily said, my name is Yongko. And from my this biosketch, I have actually two world records nobody has. One is I'm the only one probably working for three big comparative company like Procter Gamble, Georgia Pacific, Kimberly Clark, three rivals. I don't think I cannot say they hate each other, but suddenly they don't like it. They don't love each other. That's high competition. So I have a unique experience. I work for three companies. Okay? One of my experience is working for oil company. As I say, forestry industry is totally different oil industry. So I have actually the SOL, you may not know, is the subsidiary of Saudi Aramco. Aramco company is the world largest producer of crude oil from Saudi Arabia, and the SOL company subsidiary. So they have the management control. Then I spent 8 years as the research director of the R&D center SOL company. So I am actually oil refinery is my expertise also. So probably I may be the only one can work in two different industries, okay? So from that background, I think the topic which I'm going to talking about biorefinery will be very relevant also related to oil refinery as you see it later, okay? Next slide, please. So this slide is outline to speak today. Roughly, I want to follow the timeline. So I understand I have 2.5 hours for today's lecture. So I think about 1 hour later or 4 o'clock, 4:15, we might have some coffee break of about 15 minutes. Okay. Then we'll have another 1 hour lecture. Then and we'll have questions and answers. Then hopefully we'll finish this lecture at least by 5:30 here. Your time is 3:30, okay? Next one, please. So first, let me start with the forestry industry characteristics, okay? So here, as you see, the forestry industry's market is very similar to oil industry. In that sense, first, as you know, there is a mature industry. That means growth rate is low, profit margin is low also. That's a typical way talking about mature industry. And this is also requires a large capital investment. It's just the same. I think oil industry requires even larger capital investment than the forestry industry. But still, both two biggest industry require for large capital investment. And that's why very difficult to challenge, very difficult to enter the market. So there are not many forestry industry companies, oil companies, or even on the world. Then meanwhile, raw materials, one nice thing about forestry industry is raw materials are naturally abundant. Most abundant natural material probably is more than oil or crude oil. So also another nice thing about this forestry industry, this raw material is sustainable, means biodegradable and environmentally friendly. That is the biggest advantage of the forestry industry. Okay, but unfortunately, it's a bad name considered like a smokestack industry. You know what I mean? That's like air pollution. So really negative connotation for environmental protection, like also against the carbon emission of responsive blend for global warming. Okay? But another problem challenge is information technology, so-called IT industry, replaced the typical use of a paper product or something like that. So demanding for paper product is greatly decreasing as more digitization is advanced. Okay. Next one. So this is a typical nice to show is what kind of paper products we're talking about. Basically, largely we classify paper products in two groups. One is a typical paper and paperboard, which is a high density paper. Usually high density paper is a high basis weight, more than even the 100 gram per square meter. Okay? So as like printing and writing paper, or magazines, newsprint, paperboard, sag, milk carton, like belong to paper and paperboard. And another second category is the hygiene paper, which is a low density paper. Usually density is lower than about 0.1 gram per centimeter, cubic centimeter. And then it's also low basis weight. Typical basis weight range of this tissue towel is about 30 to 50 gram per square meter, so very low basis weight compared to newsprint or magazines. So, and we have several, even hygiene products, there are different groups like bathroom tissue, called the toilet paper, or facial tissue, paper towels, napkins, and away from home products. In fact, actually, in hygiene product, in this case, all the bathroom tissue, facial paper towels belong to the same category. The preparation method, the technology, performance requirements are totally different, but in the sense they're using the consumer hygiene product, they put in the same category. Okay? So the global trend of this forestry industry is, as you already know, it increasingly faced the serious challenges of environmental protection. Accordingly, the efforts of using non-woody plants, such as kinef, bamboo, sisal, and reed, have been steadily increased to replace the wood, in particularly, I think, South Asian countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, India, and South America, Brazil. Okay? Then, as I said earlier, the forestry industry generates this tremendous amount of biomass, which causes a serious environmental problem also. At present, all this biomass mainly used as a fuel, so causing global warming due to the generating carbon dioxide. So the technologies to utilize biomass for producing high value added products have been highly desirable, and if not, some misspellings, if not, it's mandatory. So this is producing high value bio added products from biomass is the main topic today. Okay, so particularly you'll see soon the very close relation or between similarity between oil refinery, biorefinery. So here, biorefinery is being developed by benchmarking oil refinery, which already successfully applied over the years. So for biorefinery, we don't have to reinvent what oil refinery industry have done last 20 or 30 years. Next one, please. So here, as you see on the all the pulp and paper the industry people knows that there's a plants and trees. So the three major chemical composition components, lignins, or hemicellulose and cellulose. So you see the lignin is a very complicated molecular structure. So that's why pulping is basically breaking down this lignin molecules to extract the cellulose. And the hemicellulose is a low molecular weight material, so easy to remove. Okay, like hemicellulose belong to sugar, so several different hemicellular, depending on the molecular structure. Okay? So in the wood chemistry or pulp and paper industry, it's very important to at least understand fundamentals of pulping, or we call the delignification. Because delignification is not only the process to remove lignin, but we have to remind how the structure changes. So when you're removing lignins, you will have a totally different molecular structure, fiber morphology. So depending on even degree of delignification, they'll have a totally different property. That means the high yield pulp, which have a very low degree of lignification, and the low yield high pure cellulose, they have a totally different molecular structure, also physical properties. Okay. So here's this the important thing in this, as we see this slide, is as I said, the pulping is a process to extract the cellulose fibers from plants or woods by removing lignins and hemicellulose. Once when you remove lignins, automatically hemicellulose removed because it's such a low molecular weight. Then here important thing is the pores created in the cell wall. You see that the picture, you see the left side is only the portion cell. Lumen is not included here. So whenever the lignin occupies the position, once they remove, they generate pores. That's why the cellulose fibers, this is before drying, it's a very highly porous structure. Okay? And then so as you see that here, more lignins are removed, more pore volumes are increased. That's why low yield pulp indicates more lignin are removed, more high porous structure. Okay? So this is the very interesting. This is a schematic diagram. Actually, it doesn't work in real world, but conceptually very useful to understand why the hydrophilic material like cellulose is drying and reswelling is an irreversible process. It's a very applicable to understand the recycled pulp or secondary pulp. That is, this is a very famous scalar model of delamination during swelling. The scalar has to be working for Paprika, and it's a pulp and paper research institute in Canada. That was a big institute at one time with Sweden and SDFI. According to them, they start actually, easy to starting backward is starting E. So pulp before drying is a highly porous straight is E. Then during drying, they start to collapse, closing together, but not so eventually the total dried reach the stage A. Okay, so totally dried is essentially non-process structure. But that started reswelling. I didn't put the arrow, but going back to E again. The problem, interesting point is this is not reversible process. It means once dried, when reswollen, they never come back to E again. They lose the porosity pretty much depending on how you dry. Okay, so that's why basically hold the problem of drying of hydrophilic polymers, not only pulp, but any kind of hydrophilic polymers. Drying and reswelling is an irreversible process. Another important point here, as I mentioned there, the irreversible process means once it dries, it seldom recovers this original state. But now another important thing is this degree of swelling is usually maybe determined by water retention volume. You are very familiar with water retention value, but it's a very critically important stuff to understand the drying behavior, how structures collapse or swelling. So basically empirically, water retention volume is a measure of the cellular pore volume. Okay, so and that's why you see the never been dried pulp has the highest water retention value because it never chance to collapse. So it's never been dried. But now it's dried, it lose water retention value decrease for structure collapse. That's why, and as I said, if it is swelling, never come back to original state. That's why all as a secondary pulp, recycled pulp has a much lower water retention volume than virgin pulp. That's what the pulp, okay? So actually, why this pulp and paper is drying is irreversible process? Actually, it's my PhD thesis. So I'm probably the first one to provide this drying theory of a hydrophobic material like a cellulose fiber. Since then, this my theory is used the classical theory of explaining the drying phenomena. If you're interested, you look at the paper published with Professor Graham Allen is my PhD advisor from chemical engineering of University of Washington. And you see the very short summary from my PhD thesis about in cellulose chemistry technology. Okay, it's 1995 or more than that, about almost 30 years old stuff. Paper industry's technology development very slow. Even 30 years still, I don't see any other drying theory yet. Okay, so they still would think I'm the drying expert, whether I believe or not. Okay? So here, there are a lot of we talking about in characterizing pulp or evaluating market pulp for purchasing. We see that we wondered what property we look at it. From the performance viewpoint, fundamental properties are not many. So I just list a couple of things. At least you're aware what is the properties is important. First, everybody is supposed to step is fiber length and distribution. Do you know softwood have a longer fiber length and about 2 or 3 millimeter, and hardwood shorter length like less than something around 1 millimeter. Okay? And the fine content is so problem. If it's too much, this is welding the drainage viewpoint. If too much fine, the very difficult range, and put in the chemical. So that's kind of a fiber length and find from the viewpoint paper making on the physical properties. Another very critical point important is we call the coarseness. It's a linear density. This is intrinsic property of wood species. Okay, so you cannot change the coarseness or whatever. So depending on fine coarseness, large, that determine the strength of flexibility of softness. So, but this is has been overlooked. But when I look at the pulp, instead of whether it's a hard or the soft wood, I always looking for what the coarseness of the pulp. So then I decide this should be suitable for towel grade or tissue grade, even tissue grade. Facial tissue requires lower coarseness than the bathroom tissue, something like that. So that's why also water retention volume is so critical for observance and to see for like a drying characteristics, something like that. Then also surface properties, wearability, usually measured by contact angle, is so critical point. As a lot of people still believe the delignification, whatever, then you say the brightness, why a lot of people think white brightness is important. But this is not just casual and nice to see, but people usually, if lignin is a hydrophobic, as you know, and the cellulose and hemicellulose are hydrophilic. So to increase wearability or contact angle, you have to remove lignins, but you don't have to totally remove the lignins to have good wearability. I'll show this in a minute. Also, surface is a real important bonding capability and hydrogen bonding. So another reason why I have too much lignin on surface, very difficult to hydrogen bonding. So you look at the property of any cellular component, you see what they properly related, what are the consequences, okay? So you cannot just single out this is good for this point, or can be bad on other point, okay? So as I said, causing is so important. It's worthwhile spend some time here. As you see, causing is defined as the weight per unit length, commonly expressed by unit of a milligram per 100 meter. Okay, so I show that this table. Usually, so far, you already know eucalyptus is lowest quotient is about 7.6, something like that, and hardwood is a little bit lower than softwood. This is approximate, depending on the species. So around the 20 to 30 is softwood quotient, and hardwood is about 20, something like that. Okay. So in the actually textile industry, that's using denier instead of quotient. So it's the same. In case of denier in textile industry, actually the one denier is 1 gram per 9,000 meter. Okay? So that then of course is a milligram per 100 meter. So you can easily convert between two. So in case of textile industry, like a nylon, whatever, one denier fiber means about 11 coatings, okay? The 11 coatings is exactly matching the what the northern hardwood craft, okay? So you see how the pulp is matching in the synthetic fiber coatings, okay? So it's very nice to know. So actually in this case, you see, in the synthetic fibers, it's easy to control the coating. So I mean the extrusion depending on nano or micro fiber, okay? Micro denier. But as I said, in the case of pulp, you cannot do because intrinsic properties. That means you are making sheet or fiber from wood pulp, you'll never have a micro denier structure, right? Because even the eucalyptus lowest coatings, about 7.6 is what it's a little bit lower than 1 denier, okay? Usually micro denier means 1,000 1 per denier, something like that. So it's never reached that point. That's another problem here is you cannot make a sheet like a nylon or polyethylene, propylene, that kind of film from the wood pulp, unless you make a solution and make a film, the extraction, the chemical process, okay? So this is some idea. And another thing here, you see, I'm trying to put a couple of non-wood pulp is avocado and the hemp and like a scissor fiber. It's about very similar to hardwood grade coatings. Okay, so and I really like this. What all this non-wood plant avocado industrial hemp is really the fiber length belong to softwood grade. It's a pretty long even though, like almost comparable higher than southern softwood craft or western softwood, that fiber length. Okay. And so when you look at the non-wood species, first the thing is what going to be fiber length corresponding to what the wood pulp size. Okay. The scissor is also very high. So you see all the wood pulp and non-wood pulp here is the hardwood or softwood very have fiber length. Okay. Next. So this is I don't know how many people see this. Maybe not many people see. This is really contact angle of a single fiber. Okay. So single fiber surface is never uniform. So what this is, by the way, this paper is published by Professor John Brogue and Dr. Hudson is this graduate student from University of Washington. And Professor Jernberg is a world famous surface colloidal expert, and he was my PhD advisor also. So, and my lab is next to his lab, so I'm very familiar with this experiment. What they think is they mount just a single fiber instead of a sheet, and just immersing in the water in the beaker, just pulling up and down. So by then you see when pulling the earth, then you will have some force. That is by the capillary forces. So that's what then using taking time image of that picture, then using the image analyzer to measure this theta angle. That's called the contact angle. Okay. So interesting, you see here, this is the single fiber contact angle with this table. So usually you see the alpha cellulose. This is a filter paper, usually Wattman filter paper. It's made of alpha cellulose, high purity cellulose. Still contact angle is 14 degrees. It means you never have a zero angle. Okay? So then it's interesting, so Laplace, I didn't show is this actually in contact angles. Important thing is not the theta itself, but it's a cosine theta, is count working rate, wetting, the stability. So it always matters the cosine theta, not the theta itself. So with even case of alpha cellulose, even though contact angle is 14 degrees, if you take a cosine theta 0.97, almost close to 1. Okay? So it's a very ridiculous, unpractical to treat this fiber surface and make a zero contact angle. Even make a zero angle, you have cosine theta 1 is only 30% improvement. Okay, you look at that way, not improving 14 degrees to 0 rather than 0.97 to 1. It's only 3%. So another here is usually see the TMP, the thermal mechanical pulse, or Douglas. And this is usually the hydrophobic material because the lignin component there. So they have about 42 degree or 51 degrees. Okay? So it looks like a much higher contact angle than alpha cellulose, but from the contact angle viewpoint. But if you take a cosine theta, even not bad, like 42.8 degrees, 0.73. Okay, so about the 20% difference is not critically important to totally remove lignins. Okay, that's another problem. Another thing, last thing you also understand is self-size. Usually self-sizing is, make a hydrophobic. Okay? So it's the highest one you can observe from the single fiber studies, 65 degrees. So about 0.4 is contact angle viewpoint is rather low. But here important is all this the pulp, whether even self-sized, unless you have treated the hydrophobic hydrocarbons, they are all the hydrophilic. By definition, as that theta 0 is completely wearable. It's very few material has that angle anyway. And as far as the contact angle is lower than 90 degrees, it's said partially wearable, safely said hydrophilic. Maybe that's really important. We don't care how much more hydrophilic shit later. And then contact angle is greater than 90 to 180, non-wearable, hydrophobic. And the actual instance, the theta is 180, it's complete non-wearable. Actually, we call the super hydrophobic. And maybe you see the material which has the largest surface tension. I didn't show here, this contact angle is increasing with the surface tension of the liquid. Okay, so largest material you have contact angle is like mercury is really almost 0. Okay? So mercury is actually break totally infinitely break into sphere. Okay? So totally contact angle, but this is not much used to for practical purpose. Okay? So I like some people serious about this wearability study to understand the fiber morphology, how they influence the wetting or observance. I recommend you read this original paper published by Hassan and Berg in Wood and Fiber Science. Okay. So now the Professor Gremala said my PhD advisor from University of Washington. This is, I think, is our right time to be visiting this the slide. That is, as I said, once during pulping, he generated large pores, in the cell, as you say. Then Professor Kramer come up idea, why we not use this pores like storage for some material rather than just the collapse and the swelling. Then his idea was how to say that, adding like this organic comment in material in the cell, inside the cellular pores, in trapping, okay, like drugs, plant growth, herbicide, fertilizer, that's stuff, okay. Then just during drying, close, you see the pores will be collapsed, okay. Then like encircled and closed this chemicals inside the cellular pores. Then eventually they reopen by moisture, whatever. They open the cellular pores. Then this perfume, whatever, can be released. Okay, that's as using the so-called controlled system. That's what actually the Professor Alan and myself, we have a U.S. patent on this area. And actually, what we did is we impregnated this never dried pulp like a perfume, and they just close it. So we make a perfume like the napkins. They haven't used in the very fancy restaurant. Okay? So they have a very perfume smelling the tissue. The napkin is basically actually our patents. Okay? So this is another idea. So when you look at the material, any point, where is the chance to make a value-added product? Either like in this case, some put this ingredients of fertilizer. This is nice, as for example, putting fertilizer, this is biodegradable, put in the plant and then release fertilizer, herbicide. Then this is no problem, it's a biodegradable wood chip itself, okay? Then originally some paper published on lumen loading. Actually, they put the aluminum oxide loading in the lumen, then make a heavy stuff. Aluminum is much weight heavier, okay? So putting just like a kidding whatever increasing basis weight to set a high price because usually pulp is sold on basis of weight. Okay? That's called it. When you put the aluminum oxide, put in the lumen, they call the lumen loading. But this is the inclusion cellular is called. It's to put the pulp in active ingredient for cellular. And this is, I think, this patent expired. Usually, the effective period for validity of a patent in US is 17 years. So already actually expired. So everybody feels to use it without paying any royalty. Okay. So now, as I mentioned a couple of times, that this drying problem. So here, actually, drying technology is one of the core technologies in pulp and paper industry. As I said, not only pulp and paper, as the polymer industry, whatever, when you're dealing with hydrophilic polymers, particularly this is much more critical issue for drying nanocellulose and nanofibers because they have a much more deeper dry due to larger surface area. So basically, I don't see any really the remarkable drying technology to produce dry nanocellulose fiber. Okay, so also it's a problem in drying technologies. Couple of reasons. One is also most energy intensive process, covering, I said, most of the total energy consumption in the plant is spent on this drying, not on the converting process or calendaring, clipping, that kind of stuff. Also, So another issue is the drying energy is most spent at the final stage of drying, and also the drying covers in a minute. But so when the water content is reaches the water retention value. So here again, I'm talking about water retention value. And also another critical point you remind is that depending on drying method, the morphology of fiber can be changed, also affecting the properties of the product. So drying play two ways. One is very drying energy intensive. Also drying method change the properties of the finished dry product. Okay. So then I said another important thing we often neglect is whenever you think of drying, talking about what temperature, you think of high temperature is good or high press drying, but not drying temperature. Actually, more critical than drying temperature is drying time. A lot of people don't. It's not aware of drying time. That is even extremely high temperature can be applied to drying cellulose fiber beyond the lignin, the lignin yellowing or browning point. If it choose a very short time, like less than second, something like that. Okay. So always drying temperature and drying time go together in a way. You can use the higher temperature and the shorter drying time. Okay. So as I said, we from University of Washington for a drying mechanism, and that explained why we get a high drying temperature important. As I said, you can see this is the journal from Cellulose Chemistry and Technology. Okay. Next one. So here, I think this is never fully officially published. So this is the first time you see the drying curve we generate. As starting here, you have in the wet pulp is a high slurry, have a lot of water. You call the free water, just can easily like draining, the pressing, that kind of stuff. So this called the free water is just centrifuging easily can remove it without, you don't need the thermal energy in the case. So that stage you call the free water evaporation. Okay? So then once all this free water removed, it's about reach the water retention value. That's why it's a critical water content. You see how important the concept of water retention value to yes a critical water point. Okay. That's then yes, as I said, water retention value is the approximate the pore volume water content of cell. Okay. That's what we call the all the pores inside the wall cell is we call the intracapillary, okay? Not the pores between fibers, but inside the fiber. Okay? So very important to understand the intracapillary. Intracapillary means the pores inside the cell, not between fibers. Okay? So then we see when the water the drying water content in the pulp is reach the water content. As you see also if water retention value is 1, then moisture content is about 50%, okay, 1 gram powder. So when the solid content 50%, the moisture 50%, then fibers start to shrink. That's where cellular pores start to collapse. Okay? So water retention value is the point where the cells start to collapse. Then now it nicely collapsed as I showed the scalance elements and model. But in the free fiber, the shrink or twisted. Okay? Then keeping going. Then about another important concept here is equilibrium moisture content is about 5%. Equilibrium moisture content is usually when you testing paper sample, you condition sample, right? About the 50% relative humidity or room temperature. That's the make sure they reach the equilibrium moisture content. Then since then, that's usually about 5%. This is the area, final stage, extremely difficult drying up. This is more almost this water is bound to cellulose fiber. So this is that's why most energy even spend on this beyond this equilibrium moisture content. So last couple of percent drying is the most spending over 50-60% total drying energy. Okay? So that's why I'm wondering, I'm working for this over 20, 30 years, why paper makers spend so much waste time or waste money drying this to below the equilibrium moisture content. Because once you put in the storage, you pick up moisture bounce back. Okay? But nobody answers. I keep asking all the three companies, oh, we do by practice, whatever. They couldn't explain. Okay? And that's a beside point. But then another thing, important thing is that if we put the drying aid, usually surfactant, you can reduce the drying time. That is much easier. Reduce the drying time is less energy. So I think even this is I developed one of my PhD thesis, but I always thinking this one, we're handling the hyperfilling material. Okay. So next one. So then it's another important concept I'd like to introduce today is the three-dimensional fiber. As you see, usually we call the paper is the flat, like a two-dimensional. Main reason is the pulp is one straight, like a flat ribbon, like a flat shape. But so as I said, the morphology of a typical cellulose fiber is considered two-dimensional, flat and ribbon-like. Three-dimensional fiber but have been highly desirable for hygiene products to increase the softness and absorbance and bulk. Okay, so like as hygiene paper, we mean by tissue, towel, napkin, something like that, and disposable absorbent products like baby diapers, sanitary napkins, incontinence pads, something like that. Okay? So also, you see, this three-dimensional fiber will be very useful for such as packaging, filtration, mask use, or the corona. We are wearing masks. I think this is for filter paper. Three-dimensional fiber very useful. And the 3D printing, the 3D structures desirable. So now, someday I might chance to talking about 3D printing technology. This is really the future technology. The 3D printing is not printing, but 3D future manufacturing technology. That's only everything talks about 3D-dimensional structure. Right? So now, as based on this theory, we Kimberly-Clark, when I work in there, invented the 3D-dimensional twist resilient fiber by flashing graph technology. The important thing is without using any chemical precipitating agent. So this is published 2005 when I worked for Kimberly-Clark. So you'll see, if you have time, you may look at this US patent invented by me and by other co-inventors. So here, this process is very simple. Wet pulp is usually about 5 or 10%. It's a very almost the maximum. So without thermal, like more mechanical drainage or vacuum water. Then just to put the fluffing is a defibrillating stuff. Then just the flash drying is a flash. You see the flash dry is a very simple. Just feeding the fiber like similar to defibrillation, extremely high temperature, usually about 300 or 400 degrees centigrade, well beyond this, killing a point of 110 degrees something. Then drying like less than second. Just the only drying time is just passing the drying chamber to the cyclone. So you really take less than second. Then when you dry product, you see the picture like this nicely twisted the picture. Okay? This is resilient among the elastic bounce back and forth because of no chemical cross linking, and they usually more like a temporary. So when you put in water, it's even untwisted. Okay, very nice picture you have. And this is, I think, will have a potential application, not only the diapers or the other cases. So here, main point is also this coating is very critical. If low coatings, more flexible, more easy to twist. Okay? So you have a cotton cotton, cotton also have a very twisted shape. Wood, all the nice, soft, the natural polymer has a more like a helical structure. It's the helical DNA, whatever. It's a double helix. The helical structure is the most stable and bound resilient structure. So this is one thing you like to know about this fiber. Next one. So I'm just listed the potential benefit of three-dimensional twisted fiber. First, the fiber property viewpoint. You always think two ways when talking about properties of fiber, from the fiber itself property and the net property when make a product. Okay? That's not translated directly from fiber properties to net properties. So even from single fiber properties viewpoint, it's resilient, like elastic, compressible, three-dimensional compressible. Fast range, right? I guess obvious, right? More like generate high permeability, porosity, so much easier to range. That's why less energy requirement for defibrillation because the contact the area between fiber is much lower because three-dimensional, it's a bulky, okay? That's our advantage. Even in case of network properties, softness in polish or fluid or like elastic, material have a high soft tactile softness, bulkiness, resilience, because high three-dimensional structure will have observable enhancement. But obviously, these material require the same work. You can use a less amount of fiber, but have the same work. Okay? Next. So now, so far, I think what I talked about, spend time on the non-wood and wood part. The reason is when we are more interested non-wood part. I think that what we experience with pulp should be directly applicable to non-wood, or at least we have to know which part cannot apply to wood purpose, to non-wood purpose. So that's why from that background of the wood pulp, we now look at what is going to happen, what is different of non-wood pulp from wood pulp. Okay? So now similar way, we'll start with global trend of a non-wood pulp. So here, as you see, the forestry industry has been considered smoke state industry like the oil industry. They like brothers go together and to face serious challenges regarding environmental protection. So the efforts to preserve forests have been steadily boosted by restricting or limiting use of trees for producing cellulose fiber. This is happening to advanced the countries like North America and Europe, Northern Europe. Okay. So this and research on replacing wood with non-wood plants such as kinep and sugar have been continuously developed. There is some interesting point here is the advanced developed countries like the United States and the Northern Europe, they worry about using wood pulp, but they don't care much about using non-wood pulp because they don't have resources, okay? So here is dilemma there. In the case of the underdeveloped developing countries like South Asia, whatever, they have enough non-wood plants, but they don't have technology of producing pulp, okay? But the developing countries will not willing to support help much, okay? And because they don't have a material, no incentive for them to develop in non-wood pulp. In case none of the developing countries, South Asian or Africa, whatever, they love to have developing non-wood pulping technology, but it's very difficult to get it. Okay? So that's one thing we have to understand situation at this moment. So meanwhile also, and the other thing is agricultural products such as straw, coconuts, sugarcane, palm oil tree have generated the best amount of biomass. So presently, most of biomass has either been buried in the land or used as a fuel, causing the environmental problem as well as global warming by emitting carbon dioxide. I think still particular, I think can thank is the using palm oil tree. I know Indonesia, Malaysia is two biggest producers of palm oil. And I think palm oil tree have a life is about 25 or 30 years. So 1 to 32 or 20, 30 years, they don't produce any more palm oil, okay, or fruits. Then there you have to cut down all the trees. What are they going to do? You cannot just bury us using as a food or fuel, okay? So I think it's a great opportunity for Indonesia or Asian countries what to do with the palm oil trees. And that's actually, I know it's a serious issue for the palm oil producers. So to solve all these kind of problems, an interest in biorefinery has been rapidly growing to produce a high-value products from the biomass. So biomass is actually waste from the plant or tree, you can say. So concept of an integrated biorefinery system is strikingly similar to that of an inter-oil refinery system, which has been used for over years. So as I said, mentioned before, in developing biorefinery, oil refinery can be safely used as a benchmark. Okay? So I'll show you the couple of biomass material. So yeah, this is a well-known KNAP. And they said here, KNAP is abundant in like Africa, Kenya, that kind of country, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, that's the belong to Jute family. You see this tree, the picture shows the height is about 135 meters, much taller than the man showed there. Okay, that's even that's only growing like 1 or 2 years. And then you see the KNAP level, depending on which portion, like even the like wood. So you have a flower and the stalk. The stalk have consist of two components. We call the best fiber core 5. Okay, so the stalk have a ratio with 40% the best fiber and the 60% core fiber. This, as I said, I'm always looking at fiber length. So fiber from best the stalk best is about 2.6 millimeter. It's equivalent to softwood size, and the core is about 0.6 millimeter. It's even lower than eucalyptus in that size. It's a very fascinating the hardwood for making tissue grade. Okay? So it's even stock. You can see the like generate produce softwood grade pulp and hardwood grade. Okay? So that's what I'm saying here. Bast fiber comparable southern wood, craft softwood pulp, and the core fiber is hardwood craft. Okay? So we have a material here to replace wood fiber. Now, what technology we need, that's the issue now. Actually, I put that there's a skeptical, that is, never mind. So here, here another interesting is we always talking when the people pulping, we look at the composition here. So we have a series of cellulose, lignin, pentosan is called the hemicellulose. This stock is actually the average between 40 or 60%. That's the stock. It consists of when best. So it's almost the average value of 40 or 60%. Here also, very important point here is lignin content is relatively low compared to wood pulp. We're talking about less than 20%. What that means is pulping non-wood pulp is much easier than wood pulp because less amount of lignin. So accordingly said, in case of wood pulping, craft pulping or sulfite. The sulfite pulping is two most used pulping process. Very rigorous, environmental friendly, because all these pulping methods include the sulfur compound, not very noxious compound. But in case of this non-wood pulp like a kinect, because low lignin content, you can use even soda organic pulping, very environmental friendly. That is a great opportunity actually for some countries who have a kinect to produce a pulp, environment friendly, and can easily replace the software or hardware. So here we see this is that usually happens is a general flow diagram, how we can start in a connect step. As I said, they consist of a back and the best and core. The decortification using the kinect, none of the part using different terminology. They call the decortification is a part departing, like in the wood part. And then you generate the stacks, like similar to wood chips. Then they call the netting. We're just talking about pulping. Okay, so we have to interpret what the terminology of non-wood compared to wood pulping. Okay, then define, undefined. Defining is that you just classify between the fibers, like fiber length. Based on fiber length, we have a core and the best. Undefined, just constrained using the biomass or fuel or something. So no big deal anyway to generate the fiber from pulping. One nice thing is just pulping is the soda pulping or organic pulping you can use. Next one. Then another interesting material, I'm always fascinated with this kind of biomass material. Another is sugarcane. That's also up in Africa. We've showed the 10 most producing sugarcane. I noticed already. Lily mentioned that some students from Philippines. Actually, Philippines also generate a large amount of this sugarcane. So it's a lot of biomass. So this is a properties very similar to that. So I think the same principle can apply to the produce sugar, the pulp from sugarcane. Now let me talking about before breaking. Let me talking about biomass also. Biomass is plant material and even animal waste used especially as a source of fuel. So at this moment that they have to change. So major sources are wood and wood processing waste, sawdust. And you may notice I put the black liquor as a biomass. A lot of people don't classify black liquor. Usually when biomass, talking about solid material. But in the sense, I strongly suggest that black liquor should belong to biomass in the pulp industry. And then agricultural crops, the waste material like corn, sugarcane, wood plant, so far. And the biodegradable solid waste, the paper product waste, we can call the major resource for biomass. And as I said, most of the biomass has been used as a fuel, causing the global warming, environmental issues, or by just the solid waste buried in the land. So, for example, now talking about biomass from oil, and particularly palm oil. I love this palm oil. So here, oil palm tree, as I said, the major producers are Indonesia, Malaysia. And we have a biomass is after they take the fruit out, then we have a trunk and the empty fruit branch after taking this the fruit from the oil palm. Then front that you see the picture of what talking about each name. Then here actually after separated, you have a crude palm oil that's using the fruit to degrade the oil. Then you have an empty fruit branch. So we call the biomass is all this trunk, the empty fruit branch of front, except that it's extracting crude palm oil. Then this I show the lignin and alpha cellulose. That's, then it said like about trunk has a little bit higher lignin content, but relative still about 20% range. And the alpha cellulose 45. This is a very large amount. That means the yield is at least 50%. Then that is so you see aspen hardwood is the alpha cellulose 43%. But hardwood. So look, I don't have data yet about spruce, but this actually oil palm tree more like belong to the hardwood grade like from aspen or birch. So I think Indonesia, Malaysia scientists, the expert should consider how to produce this pulp from biomass of oil palm tree. Okay. Next. There's another is a coconut tree. This is a similar like oil palm. So this is a general same biomass, although the amount of coconut tree produce biomass is much less amount. That is the same potential issue. Okay. So now sugarcane bagasse or whatever. This is a real problem in bread whatever after this collector sugar. What going to do with sugarcane? I understand they're using as a fuel also, but here the sugarcane bagasse is a very interesting point. And similar all this none of the plant the chemical composition that cellulose is about 40%, a little bit less than 50%, and the lignin about this is a little higher than other, like a 20% around the range. Okay, so this can be very nice pulping material. Also, we can use the same pulping regardless of biomass based on this chemical composition. Okay? So you don't have to worry about pulping method for each biomass. Have to be using same either soda pulping or organic pulping without any problem. Okay? Then another interesting is we call the African tulip. That is about 10 years ago, I think I visited the Fiji Island. Then they show the like a African tulip, like not different from Europe tulip. This is not flower, but in the Fiji Island, Fiji country, they classify this as a pest plant. Really, pest doesn't sound good, right? That's really very detrimental to the forestry. So, but they don't know what to do with this kind of pest plant. From I think it's a very nice pulping material also. Okay, that can be considered as okay. I don't know what other South Asian countries have problem with African tulip, but Fiji Island they really think that this is one of the biggest issues. Okay, instead now talking about the biorefinery. So as I said, biorefinery is defined as a refinery that converts biomass to energy and other high-value products such as chemicals. Particularly, I think in the sense refineries converts biomass to chemicals, not just the energy or fuel source. Okay? So, in a broader sense, refinery may be considered one of the creative destruction technology. Actually, in the management area, creative destruction technology is a very powerful tool, means cost down and while value up. So most of the technology's problem is when you produce high value, the cost is up. So it's not much creative, but not much destructive. Destructive means even you can reduce the cost while the price up. Okay. So over the years, oil industry has well developed called oil refinery. Actually, S-Oil is a company starting the S-Oil refinery company. Okay, the concept should be applicable by refinery. So in oil refinery, raw materials are crude, then generate a high value product. Same thing like we can do for paper or forestry industry. So I'll give you some background of oil refinery as a company as illustration, because this is company which I work for. So here you should look the sign of SL company. This is a plant in Southeast Asia and southeast of Korea. Okay. So just briefly talking about this SL company, is use the crude distillation unit, then is called the barrel per day, so called the capacity. This one barrel is US gallons, about 160 liters. So around 1 drum, usually they're talking about 280 liters. So one barrel is little less than 1 drum. So distillation capacity of SL company is the 60,000 barrel per day. Usually then talking about in the tons of the annual capacity, we talk about 300 million liters per year, corresponding to 2.8 million tons per year. So usually the crude oil gravity is about 0.8. Actually, in Korea, there are the 4 oil companies. Actually, none of the countries don't have many because, as I said, but these are huge, large capacity, that kind of stuff. So S-Oil is the third largest oil company in Korea. And that said, S-Oil is the subsidiary of the Saudi Aramco, is the biggest oil producer in Saudi Arabia. Okay? So this is a plan. Okay. Next one. So here, when you're talking about crude price up and down, first thing is you have to see the what grade level. That depending on type, the market price is totally different. Largely, the crude oil have 4 different types. We call the very light crude. As you see, the light color goes together with then light crude, heavy sour crude. Obviously, instinctively, the heavy sour crude should be cheapest one and the very bad smelling, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so usually the crude oil price itself doesn't make sense unless what specific grade we're talking about. Actually, heavy sour crude cost less than half the price of a very light crude. Okay, so you see that all different colors of the crude oil types. Next one. So how to start with the oil refinery? I'm from now on the introduce a couple of typical oil process or chemical processing. So when you have crude oil, you see the starting with distillation, because crude oil is a mixture of hydrocarbon oils, have a different boiling points. It's a mixture, physical mixture, not chemical. Okay, so first thing is when you have crude oil, separate by distillation based on boiling temperature. Okay? So typical way. So we have a crude oil. So the top bottom noun is petroleum gas. We so-called the LPG, that kind of gas fuel. It's just the carbon numbers, methane or ethane, that kind of stuff. The next stage is gasoline fuel, then kerosene, like diesel. You see all the different boiling points. Also usually high boiling point have a little bit larger the specific gravity. Then industry fuel oil. Then you have like the lubricant oil, the very high boiling temperature mixture. Okay, so distillation is basically when the crude oil separate, easy separation by just the heating based on their boiling point. Here also very important thing used by oil industry is a refining margin. Refining margin is the defined by price of product divided by price of crude oil minus 1. As you see, actually now the oil industry has a very interesting phenomenon that now crude oil price usually up. Then I think S oil is 100% export to the Aramco oil. That means that the cost is really local cost up. But actually, this is first half year, the S oil had the biggest profit margin in the whole history. I think if they afraid even to report it. Today, this half year profit is twice the whole entire last year. Okay? Then what happened is because the refining margins up, refining margins actually value the product. Okay? Even price crude oil is up, the product price much up. So that is the difference between the crude oil price and the refining margin. Okay, so that's the basic concept of how to start with crude oil before it generate this oil mass. Okay. So as see is a crude oil, as I said, mixture. They all the put the ground. Bunker oil using the oil for boiler. And the bottom residue is when you have a distillation, left the bottom part. Okay? See that the darker and darker. There's some more heavy hydrocarbons there. Okay? So this we call this residue, consider corresponding biomass in forest industry. Okay. Next one. So you see the very interesting aspartame is basically using the asphalt for road pavement on the resin. And the other one is right side is a black liquor containing lignin. I think even the lignin molecular structure is sometimes more complicated aspect. See a lot of aromatic disciplines. Okay? So that's a show that kind of color. So here what I'm saying is when you break down asphalt into high value product, technically it should be possible to break into black liquor lignin because of high value product, because the molecular structure are very similar. Okay. Next one. So here several the processes talking about. One is the key oil refinery process called alkylation. Alkylation, you're talking about methyl, ethyl, that kind of radical group you're talking about. So here, usually isobutane, I think this is more linear hydrocarbon. So then we are adding the methyl groups, adding together. Okay? So this alkylation is a critical process in the making the gasoline fuel. This is an anti-knocking project agent. Also boost the octane number. So otherwise, that's why gasoline usually has this kind of alkyl groups. So usually alkylation means the gasoline plant, the process. So here you see the olefin feed, that kind of linear carbon material to the reactor. Then just this alkylation reaction, then generate this alkyl groups. Use as additive for gasoline. Okay? Then obviously using some catalyst to promote the reaction rate. Next one. So another important, the most important process of high-value product in oil refinery is called hydrocracking. Actually, hydro means hydrogen, okay? That means high molecular weight will break down using the by hydrocracking. That's cracking means breaking down. So here, hydrocracking is defined as a conversion process of a higher boiling point of petroleum, like asphalt and the bottom residue you see, into right hydrocarbon molecules, okay? Like gasoline and the fuel. And obviously need a catalyst to speed of reaction. So here is interest the very high molecular weight is cracking when the lower molecule and the adding hydrogen all the way going through the end of the toluene is a final petrochemical product. Everybody familiar. Toluene is key petrochemical product made like a synthetic fiber polymer or something. Okay, so how this is basic here important is hydrocracking is a critical process to break it down the heavy material from crude oil, and I strongly believe hydrocracking can be applied to black liquor to break lignin into smaller low molecule. I can talk more about this one later. Okay. So here, usually BTX is a three major petrochemical. You see from naphthalene is a very bad smelling, whatever. There's a hydrogenation is treating, means treating with hydrogen. The hydrocracking means breaking down with hydrogen. Okay, so suso is so critically important. Okay, then you see the all three different material like benzene, toluene, xylene. The only difference is the toluene is one natural like alkylation adding the benzene, and xylene is one more. The benzene or just the two methyl group for benzene. Okay? So that's usually BTX key petrochemical. So most oil refinery, this are the simply BTX plant dedicated to produce this BTX benzene, toluene, xylene. Okay? So depending on, you need some understanding this chemistry also. So the xylene, depending on the two position of a methyl group, if two closer together, we call the orthoxylene. Okay, so it will be alternate there. There's a metaxylene, and just the symmetrical up and down is paraxylene. Actually, paraxylene is the basic material to produce polyester. You put the PET bottle using the football bottle. That is the basic raw material of paraxylene. It's so critically important material to produce polyester. Okay? So this is how I'm going just usually worthless like a depth in the bottom residue. Also, you see that the now hydrogen car is going to gain popular starting this going to next generation car after electric car. But oil industry is the best, most producer of hydrogen. Why they using the most hydrogen? But that's produce most hydrogen by cracking this crude oil. That's generate the hydrogen. Okay, so whenever you're thinking about hydrogen, you cannot away from oil industry. So eventually, I think oil industry, car industry make working together generate the hydrogen car. That's another story. But hydrogen is so critically important. The chemical can be used everywhere. Okay. So here I show the this is a synthetic hydrogen. Now the like a xylene, methylene, and so they don't have the hydro OH group, COH group. Then you have this all the polyester whatever. They need the OH group to make so-called condensation polymerization process. So without that, you cannot generate the polyester. So here, the another is just the oxidation process you see, making the CHs with the COH, then the carboxyl group, then just doing the same way, then go back to PT bottle. So using the tariff light is using that is the from paraxylene, you see, just the CH to make a COH, the PT bottle. It's most widely used one, transparent. So you need this kind of better chain is you understand what raw material you need, how can make it at what stage, and what is the most effective economic way to get the material. Okay? So most of the petrochemical starting with this BTX. Okay? Now aromatization is another important process. I think this everything applicable to biomass part. That is here the factors in the hexane, for example, is linear hydrocarbon hexane. But the straight linear carbon that's under the catalyst and high temperature. We just making the linear material cycle like a loop, like a cycle hexane, that kind of stuff. Then that cycle hexane is saturated with the hydrocarbon. Whenever saturated means just no double bond of hydrogen, then there is no chemical reaction you have. You need a double the bond to make the polymerization synthesis. So then now dehydration is just from cyclohexane. It's saturated with hydrocarbon. By removing 3 hydrogen molecules, you can the benzene. Then you have one of the basic, the chemical gas I said on the BTX. Okay, that's what hexane is a much cheaper material than linear hydrocarbon can generate just very expensive variable benzene by just using catalyst and hydrogen. Okay? That's called the aromatization. Aromatizes, aromatic means the perfume smell. That kind of stuff. So now talking about the value chain sugarcane asset. This is prospective, that I see. Maybe price cost may be different depending on country or situation, timing. So this is the material and the finance balancing. Let's start with like a sugarcane, for example. Let's say so starting from weight is 100. Then let's say sugarcane is about 50% moisture. Then you might buy this sugarcane about 45 to 55 tons, approximately 50 tons. Then from this sugarcane, you extract the sugar like 70% and the 30% of bagasse. So that's biomass. Okay, so you book the sugar 70%, then values add up to $330 ton from the $50 ton. That's why obviously you want to produce sugar from sugar cane. Okay? Then here most you sell sugar as the final product. But if you make a bioethanol from sugar, then increase from $330 per ton to 400, a little bit high. So that's not much incentive to produce bioethanol from sugar. Okay, like if you put adding those processing manufacturing processing cost, profit margin is not much great. Okay? So then you won't buy it. Then let's say about the 30% of bagasse is biomass. Then we said about 50% of moisture. Then among 30, only 15 is the you can dry mass. Then bagasse you can sell as about ton, $150 ton. This is here, okay. So this is still cheaper than crude oil using the oil or whatever. Okay. Then now going back here is among the dry bagasse, you have using 65%. Is you can use as a pulping material, and about 35% is a pit. Okay, this pit can be used to fuel. It's a really residue from the by bagasse. Then a little bit you can change the total material balance. Then from pulping material, I said this bagasse about 50% is cellulose. So pulping you have using the soda and pulping, you can have a pulp is total mass balance 7.5 from sugarcane 100. Okay, but you can have a cell as 600 to 800 pounds. Not bad, right? Starting from only the $100 to 150 pounds for dry bagasse. Okay. Then now at this moment, this sugarcane plant using if they use the pulping, they use the black liquor as a fuel. That I'm saying is we should not sell using as a fuel, rather using biorefinery chemical. That's a really challenge the pulp and paper industry, that we should not use black liquor as a fuel, but should be used as raw material for chemical following the oil refinery system. Okay? And that's what my proposal actually. As I said, the perspective, because nobody ever applied based on this principle yet. But this explained what the basic concept of a biorefinery. Okay? So this is another nice picture I got from this website. The starting crops of this agriculture, you call the lignin cellulose waste. Yeah, that's basically cellulose, hemicellulose, lignin powder form, this food in all the cycle, the field. So basically, we have a biorefinery. It's just to make a value added product of raw material. So refinery means always value of whatever process. In case of oil, using the oil as a raw material, biomass, biorefinery, biomass. Okay, so high value compound. Okay. So now this slide actually shows the very nice comparison between biorefinery and oil refinery. Just starting, as I said, now pathway we is using the biomass from trees and plants. Another is oil, refinery starting crude oil. So pathway actually the biomass refinery, called the refinery, and the transformation using this kind of the derivative, the end of this aromatic groups. Okay, so and the bottom is oil, crude oil, aromatization. This transformation actually means here aromatization. Transformation is just the ambiguous general term to changing the molecular structure. And in the oil refinery, aromatization producing the, the cyclic aromatic compound from straight carbon, which I showed you before. Then eventually come up the same. So you see the very nice comparison how we use the biomass to make the same value BTX chemical like from oil. Okay? So it's always nice to look at the molecular structure. Oh, you need any kind of production. Basically, you want to need to add hydrogen, remove hydrogen, or need the oxygen. Basically, all the biorefinery or oil refineries either adding hydrogen on the oxygen or removing. That's a major concept or reaction. Okay? So now we call the integrated biorefinery. This is the title of today's presentation. But integrate multiple systems, not only generate one material. So here, I really like this slide because it talks about they using the black liquor as a material. And so I think one key point of today's message is black liquor. Oh, it's a great biomass material to make a high value product. Then you go all the way, then develop carboxylic acid in this structure here. We see that from this dark black liquor, this carboxylic acid. This carboxylic acid, another key chemical, petrochemical, used to produce polymers. In this case, like nylon, polyamide or polycarbonate, that kind of stuff is a very key material like xylene or PTX. Okay? So it's a very expensive material, can be also obtained from this black liquor. So if I have time, actually, I'd love to invest this research on this area using black liquor to generate carboxylic acid. You'll make a fortune actually instead of selling the black liquor as a fuel. So here, this is another example I show. This glucose is actually the hemicellulose, rather than hemicellulose and fuel or whatever. Remove. You can just go into a couple of reactions. Now come up the paraxylene. As I said, a very critical material for BTX. Paraxylene using to produce a PT, butter, whatever. So, you can add in the how much in price of the no comparison the price between glucose and paraxylene. Okay? So you see you don't have much, just the catalyst reaction, the temperature, the catalyst, then you can generate. So whenever you have something to produce a petrochemical from oil refinery, I think you can go with this biomass. In this that I show how the hemicellulose can be converted to high value petrochemical like paraxylene as example. Okay. So now here is some value. I want to still emphasizing the lignins. So lignin isolation, this is like, I don't know, more like a chemical, fractionation, but they have a different grade of lignin, like technical lignin, craft lignosulfate, soda lignin, after probably depending on the pulp that over recovered by separation fractionation. Then this is for the valorization, means the value of this cost of product. So rather than selling as a lignin, you have a power fuel like high value like gasoline, diesel, much high value than this lignin grade, like using the micromoles aromatic compound. Okay, so our target should be right hand side, like the value of the product. you can start from any kind of lignin. So even we start from, I think, a black liquor, whatever contain the lignin. So this is, I think, is good references. Luo looks like a Chinese scientist, chemical from lignin. I think it's a very good reference you look into if you're interested in lignin, converting lignin into high value chemicals. So another one is the black liquor. So here, food, whatever you chip, have lignin out, evaporate. That's lignin out means using as like using the other purpose for lignin in itself, as the fuel. So you see the several different ways of how we can, where we can extract lignin, and where to convert the lignin to high value product. So here, bottom so far, most of pulp and paper industry is going the bottom line, just wood chips, bleaching, and using for pulp and paper. Then just digest it, going to just recover it from the fuel. But I think we should be using the left side even now to make a high value product. So you get this flow down in different ways how to utilize lignin. So here I like this slide from this the reference you might mention. This is we said the phenolic building blocks. This is benzene rings because the phenolic group. You see that this when you break down the lignin, this is always very similar to BTS structure. Very similar to benzene, parazole, and whatever. So a lot of great opportunity to produce a high value petrochemicals from lignin. So I think this is a very impressive slide, rather than this black liquor, just a contaminant stuff. So this we call everything we call the phenolic alcohol. This is most important petrochemical. But I think we can, this slide shows that kind of chemical can also be obtained from lignin. Okay? So now you want to summarize that the forest industry has been considered smokestack industry, like the oil industry, and faces serious challenges regarding environmental protection. The efforts to preserve forests have been steadily boosted by restricting or limiting the usage of trees for producing salary fiber. That's what we already mentioned. To this end, research on replacing wood with non-wood plants, such as knap and sugar, have been continuously developed or being developed at this moment, particularly by South Asian countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and so on. Then meanwhile, agricultural products such as straw, coconuts, sugarcane, and palm oil trees generate the vast amount of biomass. Presently, most of the biomass has either been buried in the land or used as a fuel, causing environmental problems as well as global warming by emitting carbon dioxide. This is everybody appreciate, understand. This is where forest industry faces right now. The biorefinery is an emerging, I call it emerging technology, since it was not fully developed yet. And indeed, to convert the biomass to energy and other high value products, such as chemicals. In a broader sense, biorefinery may consider one of the creative disruption technologies, as I said, price up while cost down, which are designed to increase value. For a biorefinery process to be successful, it's necessary to begin the life cycle of product as well as the value chain, which I showed several examples like kinep, oil palm tree, the sugarcane bagasse. Okay, we have to see the whole system entire picture, which part you can replace it, process by leather. So it's not just a simple process one by one. But that's what you call the integrated biorefinery system. So over the years, the oil industry has developed oil refinery where to produce high value products from heavy crude oil, bunker oil, and the bottom residue of crude oil. An integrated biorefinery system is strikingly similar to the integrated oil refinery system. Accordingly, in developing biorefinery, oil refinery can be safely used as a benchmark. Then in short, the future of the forest industry should be very bright and much more promising than you might think. I think it's closing my talk now. So enjoy challenging opportunity. Thank you.